Hi guys, I'm still outside to finish my farm work, feeding the horses. But I want to let you know what today's video is about. The experts are thinking that the supervolcano Campi Flegrei in Italy might erupt soon, and there are signs, and we will talk about this, and we will also talk about what it means. And they have found out that the most dangerous volcano on Earth, the Vesuvius, and the Campi Flegrei, they are sharing the same magma chamber underneath. So what does that mean? We know that the Campi Flegrei is a caldera. There's large calderas. You'll later see, I'll show you aerial pictures. And basically what is happening, the land is rising there. The port town of Pozzuoli, roughly around 330,000 people, some say in the greater area 500,000 people, are at highest risk. But also on that volcano, the Campi Flegrei, that's about 150 square kilometers. It's a huge area, and as it's volcanic, there is very fertile ground. So unfortunately, people are basically living right on the volcano, and they have settled right on the edge of the volcano. So that is a huge problem. If you compare it to what's going on in Iceland right now, the town of Grindavik with roughly 3,800 people. Here we're talking about millions if you look at the greater Naples area as well. So if all that has to be evacuated, it'll be absolutely chaos, an absolute nightmare. So the fishing town of Pozzuoli has already risen 10 meters over the time that this caldera has been inflating. And it's dangerous, because what they're saying is, and that's also what I'm always saying about the magma chamber that is underneath the Svartsengi area in Iceland, the area at the Campi Flegrei volcano, there are signs that the crust has reached elasticity, so that it's not stretching any further, and that's why magma could have a chance to come to the surface. But I want to get into a little bit more detail what that means. We've talked about the supervolcano in the past, but this has just come out, and there has been a study where they were really trying to understand these kinds of volcanoes better and be better at predicting what is going to happen. Because normally what the scientists are using, they're using at earthquakes, and they're using land rise GPS data, and that's all that they could do. But there's a science group that has looked at multiple volcanoes and how they behave and what they're doing. So they have done this since 2017, and what they're saying, and this is the scary part, that this volcano, the Campi Flegrei, is behaving exactly as they predicted. And now they are predicting that this thing might erupt. And it has erupted last time in the 1500s, and they're saying it's overdue. And if it fully erupts, this could have an effect on whole Europe, but also North America, because there's so much ash plume that will get into the atmosphere that will cool down the climate for a while. They call this little ice age, and by just saying these words, I'll probably get an educational post underneath my video that YouTube creates automatically. So should you see that there, and they're trying to educate you about the sea change, it's not from me, and I don't have an opinion on this, and I don't want to express an opinion on this, because it's totally different from what I am mentioning here regarding the volcanoes. So I don't want to get into all that political stuff and the debate about that. So the supervolcano, that is okay. We're talking about the supervolcano Campi Flegrei again. That is near Naples, a city with roughly 3 million people living there, and the experts fear that the eruption might happen. And they fear this amongst other reasons because this supervolcano is attracting their attention again through, among other things, numerous small earthquakes again. And if you've been watching my channel for a while, We're quite educated now about what earthquake swarms can mean regarding a volcanic eruption, because if magma reaches towards the surface, it needs to find a way, so it needs to dig through the Earth's surface like a worm, and that causes earthquakes, usually a swarm of a lot of smaller earthquakes, because it's like drilling through the crust of the earth. So that's why they are concerned, and this thing has been active for quite a while and rumbling around, so that they have been fearing the worst. And so it is in that area, you know, there's Etna, Vesuvius, Stromboli. There are numerous volcanoes all over Italy that attract attention with activity from time to time. And one is particularly very sensitive, and that is the Vesuvius in southern Italy. It's one of the most dangerous volcanoes on Earth, but very, very close to Vesuvius is another particularly dangerous area that is classified as a supervolcano, and that are the Phlegraean Fields in English and Campi Flegrei in Italian. And that area, as I already said, extends over a huge area. So we're not talking a very small isolated area. So it is maybe similar to the Reykjanes Peninsula in Iceland, where we have a lot of volcanic system, but it's basically threatening the whole peninsula right now as it has woken up. So this one is a little bit comparable. It's 150 square kilometers, and it begins right on the outskirts of Naples. That's what makes it so dangerous, because how do you evacuate millions of people so quickly, especially if you don't have many major roads that you could use? So roads will be clogged very, very quickly. We've seen it in the past, even just recently with the Ukraine war. The main highway out of Kiev was clogged. And in the past, in World War II, in Germany, people were taking the highways out of the cities and they were clogged, so they had to walk. So not a nice situation, imagining to have like 3 million people, and a little bit more than that if we take in account the city of Pozzuoli and the areas that are right on the caldera. So even included in these critical areas are the Italian islands of Ischia, Procida, and Nisidia. So in the Phlegraean Fields area, it's an area with a lot of thermal springs, and the ground can also become very hot due to the volcanic activity. So there are more than 50 eruption hotspots in that area, like 50 eruption hotspots. And 2/3 of the volcano's caldera, it's like a cauldron-shaped structure that has been formed by previous eruptions, is also underwater. You don't even see it. And guys, since we're in the middle of the video, my guy behind me and we would like to ask you, could you do us a favor and give this video a like, watch it till the end, share it on your social media with whoever you can to push it out in the algorithm a little bit, and leave me a comment. What do you think? Do you think this thing will erupt? So thank you very much for that, guys. And now back to the video. And on the supervolcano, there is around 360 people that live there. And as I already said, the Vesuvius and the Phlegraean Fields share a common magma chamber at a depth of around 10 kilometers. So it's not super, super deep. So the last eruption of the Phlegraean Fields supervolcano is dated back to 1538, but the volcano has been very turbulent over the last 70 years. And according to experts, like tens of thousands of small earthquakes were measured during this period, and the town of Pozzuoli has been lifted by quite a few meters, so 4 meters in total. So that is really, really scary, guys. So there is a new study out where researchers from the University College in London and also the Natural Research Institute for Geophysics and Volcanology in Italy have examined this supervolcano Campi Flegrei in detail. And if you want to have a closer look at that study, it was published in the journal Nature Communications, Earth and Environment. And this study shows and proves, and that's the scary part, that the Phlegraean Fields became weaker and more prone to cracking and making an eruption more likely because of that. And of course, I've said it in Iceland already, that magma chamber filling and rumbling around and stretching the crust on top of it makes the crust brittle. So in order to come to this conclusion, the research team applied a model of volcanic fractures to this supervolcano. So they have a model that helps them interpret the patterns of earthquakes and ground uplifts. So their conclusion is parts of the supervolcano were stretched almost to the point of rupture. So almost to the point of rupture already. So the magma was filling up so badly that the crust almost couldn't hold it anymore. And I'm always bringing this example with the rubber band. If I stretch it to the max, to the maximum of the elasticity, it'll burst, right? Or like a hot air balloon, you fill it up with air, but if you overfill it, it's going to burst. So the results show that parts of the volcano are becoming weaker, and that means it could break, even if the tensions pulling it apart are right now or seem to be lower than during the last crisis years, about 40 years ago. So the force is not that strong, but the crust is more damaged and brittle. So the new study confirms that the Campi Flegrei are getting closer to eruption. But of course, as always, the science is not super progressed in that area. So it always doesn't mean that an eruption is guaranteed. So a fracture could open, a crack could open through the crust, but then the magma still needs to be pushed up in the right place for an eruption to occur. But the science and the risk is growing for that to happen. And recently there was a big scandal that the government of Italy, some, council that was talking about the risk, were kind of hiding the fact that the risk is way higher than publicly said. And these papers came out, and the mayors of the towns and areas around the supervolcano were super angry because they also didn't know about this. So as for now, the scientists are happy because the supervolcano acts as they predicted. So that gives them some confidence that their models are correct, which means for the people living there that the scientists might be correct, that this thing might erupt anytime soon. So the first time that they have applied this model to the supervolcano was in 2017, and they found that there has been an increasing number of small earthquakes. So this last year in April alone, there were more than 600 small quakes that were recorded. And that was as many as never before in 1 month. And in addition, the ground beneath the city was raised by about 4 centimeters annually. So that's quite significant. And so we know if we have larger earthquake swarms and they keep coming and they keep getting larger, that might be an indication for the magma coming up to the surface, or at least like moving somewhere else. So this is an activity that is related to the movement of fluids about 3 kilometers below the surface, and that is not much. So the last turbulent phase of the supervolcano was probably caused by magmatic gas that penetrated into the cracks, into the rocks, and filled like the 3-kilometer thick crust like a sponge. So the earthquakes occur when the faults shift due to stretching of the crust. So the pattern of the 2020 earthquakes that happened suggests that the rock is not responding with elasticity, and that's not good. So it is breaking rather than bending. That's what they're saying. And the problem that they outline is they're saying, and that's the problem everywhere with volcanology, we can't see what's happening underground. So they're reminding people we don't know, we can't see it. Instead, we have to decipher the clues that the volcano gives us, like the earthquakes and the uplifts of the grounds. So they're saying an eruption of the Campi Flegrei supervolcano is not inevitable. That's for sure. So in this study, they are explaining that unrest since the 1950s has been cumulative, meaning that an eventual eruption may be preceded by relatively weak signals such as a lower ground uplift and fewer earthquakes. And that is exactly what always happens in Iceland before the eruption. So once the magma chamber can't expand anymore and reaches the point of maximum elasticity, remember the rubber band, I reached the maximum elasticity, I can't stretch it any further. So then the ground is not uplifting anymore. It gets quiet and there's less earthquakes until then the eruption will happen. So the same, what they're saying, applies to all volcanoes that have been quiet for generations. And that's the same in Iceland. The Reykjanes Peninsula has been quiet for 800 years and it's erupting there. It has woken up. So that supervolcano will wake up too eventually. So the Campi Flegrei could now enter a new routine of gentle rising and falling as seen in similar volcanoes around the world. Of course, there's always the chance that it could just simply come to rest. They can't say with any certainty what will happen, but they are saying it is very important that we are prepared for all outcomes. So what does the research team want to do in the next step? So it wants to apply its volcano model to other volcanoes that have reawakened after a long period of dormancy. So I suspect they will go to Iceland as well. So maybe that's going to help people in Iceland to better predict what's going on their peninsula. And the aim of that is to find more reliable criteria as to whether a volcanic eruption is likely. So currently eruptions are only predicted using statistical data for each individual volcano rather than applying basic principles to multiple volcanoes and comparing them with each other. So this study is the first of its kind to predict eruptions at an active volcano, and it is important to step towards their goal of improving the prediction of eruptions worldwide. That's what they're saying. And I think that is badly needed. And I think there is a unique chance that they have now if they go and have a look at Iceland, because that is kind of behaving similar like this supervolcano. So scary, right? I think it is scary. And what is especially scary is that scientists are saying that both volcanoes are ready for an eruption. So the Vesuvius and the Campi Flegrei. So imagine, guys, both volcanoes erupting together. And there have just been reports at the end of January this year that there has been an increase in ground uplift and the earthquake activity right underneath the Campi Flegrei caldera. So a slight increase in activity at the end of January. At the third week of January, there was then another increase, and now the ground is rising at a rate of roughly like a centimeter per month. And so this is quite high, and at peak times, the ground is even rising like 1.5 centimeters per month if you look at the average over the last few months. And there were days with even greater uplifts. And so the volcano is back in business, that's for sure. And it doesn't look like that there will be any decline in activity anytime soon. And in January also, they saw the strongest earthquake there to date with a magnitude of 2.6, and the epicenter was in the Gulf of Pozzuoli. So some scientists are saying what the officials release is sometimes just stuff to calm down the population. Particularly how Vesuvius is behaving right now is what worries the scientists very, very much when it comes to looking at all the volcanoes in Italy. So you have to remember that is the volcano that has destroyed the town of Pompeii in an absolutely violent eruption in AD 79, and it is surprisingly quiet right now. And it was surprisingly quiet until an eruption in 1944. And since then, Vesuvius had on average an eruption every 12 years in the 19th century. So now it has been dormant for almost 8 decades. So that is unusual. So the experts are worried about both volcanoes. So research is currently unable to identify any changes on Vesuvius, but the situation is completely different at the Campi Flegrei. Since the Campi Flegrei has been restless for quite some time, scientists are saying that they have every sign at Campi Flegrei that magma is moving. Also, unfortunately, at the moment, it is not possible to determine the direction of the movement of the magma. Is it coming up? Is it going sideways? So that's the problem, right? So the reservoir that is below Campi Flegrei and Vesuvius, that is where the magma collects again. And there are multiple reports, 10 kilometers, 8 kilometers, 9 kilometers, but maybe even less than that. That's what they found out just recently, that it could be way, way closer to the surface, as close as 4 kilometers. And that would be really like scary. I have to say it again. The big question is now, will that magma continue to rise to the surface from that magma chamber or not? And nobody can give an answer at the moment. So what they know is that volcano near Naples is restless. So I know it's not satisfying to hear all these answers that they basically don't know or can't predict, but we have to realize that in general, the geological view that scientists have when they look at volcanoes is a little bit different. So as a geologist, one looks at the development of a volcano over thousands of years, and then what one sees when they look at Stromboli, Vesuvius, or the Phlegraean Fields is completely normal. The volcanoes have always phases of increased activity or long periods of rest. But what they're saying, if you look at the Italian volcanoes from our very small time window, our lifetimes, things look different, and what's happening right now is very unusual, and that's why this is so concerning. So I'll keep you updated about this, what's going to happen. They are monitoring the land rise and of course, like the earthquake swarms. So basically that's the same thing what we're doing in Iceland. We just had an eruption in Iceland, and they're saying the next eruption is imminent, maybe in 3 weeks, 4 weeks sort of thing, as the magma chamber there is already filling up after the last magma was flowing out and causing an eruption. Guys, check out these videos about Iceland, so it gives you a better picture of how these eruptions work. Although in Iceland we see fissure eruptions, they are usually not explosive, and maybe they spill like 80 to 100 meters high, and the fissures keep opening and getting longer. That is a little bit different with Vesuvius and the Campi Flegrei. That's probably going to be way more explosive with way more ashes in the cloud. As I mentioned, that's why the ash particles can block the sun. So guys, that was my update. And guys, if you liked this video, it would be awesome if you could leave us a like. And thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for your supers and the coffee you keep buying us so I can buy hay for these guys. So my farm and I, we say thank you so much for you guys. So stay tuned. There's going to be another Iceland update very soon, but also a Titan submersible update very, very soon with a very captivating story with what's happening with Stockton Rush's relatives. So stay tuned for that, and thanks so much, guys. Bye bye. I could listen to that sound day and night. Isn't that a beautiful sound?